Hey, it's Bilal, and this is Deep Sea, the podcast about seeing the world more deeply. Growing up, I loved Bruce Lee. His fighting skills, elegance, and wit were unique. But beyond that, he showed that someone who looked different from the conventional superstar could become a global icon, much like Muhammad Ali. I wasn't alone in thinking this. In a strange mashup, the American rap scene adopted him as an icon, most notably with the American hip-hop group, the Wu-Tang Clan. Their debut album, Enter the Wu-Tang, was a clear play on Bruce Lee's most famous film, Enter the Dragon. The album was replete with samples from Asian martial arts movies. Now, if you read the personal writings of Bruce Lee, you'll discover an incredibly deep individual. He was not only a master of the physical, but he was also a master of the spiritual. This is reflected in his famous quote.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Bruce Lee had actually developed a systematic approach to living this way. In the late 1960s, he started to develop Jeet Kune Do, JKD, which initially was an approach to martial arts based on his own scientific studies of combat. However, in 1970, due to a back injury, he was bedridden for several months and was unable to train his body. This allowed him to train his mind, and he realized that JKD was more about subduing yourself than subduing your opponent. He would then describe JKD as the art of the soul at peace, like moonlight mirrored in a deep lake. In his notes, he writes about the ultimate source of JKD and warns of the risk of any technique becoming a disease if the mind becomes obsessed with it. He was particularly interested in desire, which he saw as an attachment. He even said that desiring not to desire was an attachment. More specifically, he described the 6 diseases to avoid. The first is the desire for victory. He saw this as something that obstructs and blinds us and narrows our vision, often at the expense of others. The second and third diseases are the desire to resort to technical cunning and the desire to display all that you have learnt. These desires could distract us from what is needed at the moment. They would exclude other tools of success as we become attached to one way of doing things. And importantly, we stop creating space for other people's opinions. The fourth disease is the desire to overawe the enemy. This results in us losing sight of others and we quickly turn into bullies. The fifth disease is the desire to play a passive role. This makes us lose accountability or we start acting like a martyr. And even though we may appear easygoing, we use this passivity as a weapon of guilt. Finally, there's the desire to get rid of whatever disease you are likely to be infected with. The trouble with this is that it creates a separation between us and the disease. This is an act of denial. The reality is that the disease is passed off us, and we need to be with it in order to manage it. To be clear, Bruce Lee didn't think that the objects of desire like victory or technical cunning were necessarily bad in themselves, but it was the desire for them that should be avoided. He believed that these desires prevented us from being in a state of emptiness. This in turn would obstruct our freedom of action. Importantly, he saw these as general principles to live by, not just in the domain of martial arts. It's this wisdom that has made Bruce Lee an enduring icon and has made me a big fan of his. Thanks for listening. Please tell a friend about the podcast, leave a rating on iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Spotify, or wherever you go for your podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter. My handle is @BilalHafiz123, on Facebook, LinkedIn, or on my blog, bilalhafiz.com. I'll be back soon, so tune in then.